How do you usually remember Benjamin Franklin? A calm, great man on the $100 bill? An old man with silvery hair flying a kite in a storm to invent the lightning rod? Today, please forget that glamorous image, because if life were a game of cards, Benjamin Franklin was dealt the worst hand. He was not born into luxury. He was born into the pungent smell of beef tallow and the suffocation of poverty. In 1706, in a cramped house in Boston, Ben was the youngest son among 17 children of a poor candlemaker. Imagine 17 mouths to feed. The 10-year-old boy Ben had to drop out of school because his father could not afford the tuition. Instead of running around and playing, Ben's small hands had to be soaked in vats of foul fat, cutting candle wicks, smelling that stench day after day. Ben hated that job to an extreme. He looked out at Boston Harbor, watched the ships with billowing sails, and craved to escape. Craved to be a sailor and let the ocean swallow him rather than waste away beside the vat of fat. To save his son from running away to sea, the father shoved Ben into the print shop of his own biological brother, James Franklin, and this was exactly where the real nightmare began. James Franklin was a gruff and violent man. Jealous of his younger brother's intelligence, James spared no brutal beatings that left Ben half dead. Ben was confined in the print shop, working 14 hours a day. But Ben's mind refused to submit. He yearned to write articles for his brother's newspaper, but James bluntly refused. "You're just a ragged apprentice." That night, under the dim candlelight, Ben came up with a crazy plan. He disguised himself as a middle-aged widow named Silence Dogood. He wrote sharp, socially satirical essays, and then, at midnight, secretly slipped them through the doorslit of his brother's print shop. The next morning, James picked up the writing. Astonished, he called his friends over to admire it and immediately printed it on the front page. The entire city of Boston went into a frenzy. Who is Mrs. Silence Dogood that she is so profoundly wise? Ben stood in the corner of the workshop, rubbing the bruises on his shoulder from the previous day's beating while smiling bitterly. After 14 wildly successful articles, Ben decided to show his hand. He admitted he was the author. Can you guess if the older brother would embrace him? No. James's pride was deeply wounded. The beating that followed was even more horrific than before. At the age of 17, unable to bear it any longer, Ben made a life-or-death decision to run away. At that time, running away from an apprenticeship contract was a criminal offense, hunted down like a wanted criminal. Ben sold his only beloved books to get money for a boat ticket, fleeing to New York, then walked and rode through storms for many days to reach Philadelphia. Picture this, a 17-year-old boy stepping into the city of Philadelphia on a Sunday morning, clothes dirty and ragged, pockets bulging from being stuffed with spare socks and shirts. In his pocket there were only a few copper coins left. He bought 3 large loaves of bread, tucked 2 under his armpits, and chewed on the remaining one as he walked. Anyone looking at him would think, this kid will starve to death in the slums within a month, but they were wrong. In Philadelphia, Ben quickly asserted his printing talent. He caught the eye of the governor, Quinton Keith. The governor promised to financially support Ben to go to London to buy printing presses and return to open a large workshop. Believing the promise of a high-ranking politician, the young Ben eagerly boarded a ship to England. But when the ship docked in London, Ben was shocked to realize Governor Keith was a fraud. He hadn't sent a single letter of credit. Ben was abandoned in a strange country, halfway around the world from home, without a single relative, without a penny in his pocket. Cry? Despair? Ben had no time for that. He immediately applied to work as a hired hand at large print shops in London. Among the British workers who were drenched in beer and alcohol all day long, Ben drank only plain water, worked twice as productively, self-studied foreign languages, and found a way to survive. 2 years later, he gathered enough money to buy his own boat ticket back to America. That was how Benjamin Franklin resurrected from the ashes of betrayal. Returning to America, with his sharp acumen, Ben set up his own print shop, published his own newspaper, and the famous Poor Richard's Almanac. He was wealthy, he was successful, but fate never let him go. In 1736, a nightmare struck. The 4-year-old son he dearly loved, Francis, contracted smallpox and passed away. It was a heartbreaking pain that changed Franklin's life. For the rest of his life, he was tormented by guilt for having delayed his son's vaccination. From that tragedy, he plunged into science to find ways to save humanity from the disasters of nature. In the 18th century, people considered thunder and lightning to be the wrath of God. Whenever there was a storm, churches would ring their bells continuously, and as a result, bell ringers were frequently struck dead by lightning, and houses burned to the ground. Franklin did not believe that. He argued that lightning was just a giant current of electricity. In June 1752, a horrific storm hit Philadelphia. When everyone fled indoors, Ben and his eldest son rushed out into an open field. In his hand was a silk kite with a sharp iron rod attached to the top and a copper key tied to the end of the silk string. Benjamin Franklin was playing with death. The rain poured down. The kite string was soaked. Ben stood under a chestnut tree. Black clouds rolled in. A flash of lightning ripped through the sky. It struck the kite directly. Ben brought his finger close to the copper key. Just a minor slip, and his heart would stop instantly. Zap! A stream of electricity sparked across, and the silk fibers on the kite string stood on end. Ben felt a jolting shock. He burst into tears in the rain, not because of pain, but because he knew he was right. Lightning was not a divine punishment. Lightning was electricity. And right after that, he invented the lightning rod, saving millions of homes around the world from fire. Peak science, immense wealth, yet Franklin's greatest hardship lay in his final years, when he entered the political battle to win independence for America. At nearly 70 years old, an age when he should have been enjoying his retirement with his children and grandchildren, Franklin was thrown into a new family tragedy. His son, William Franklin, now the governor of New Jersey, chose to remain loyal to the King of England. Father and son confronted each other on opposite sides of the front line. When the American Revolution broke out, Ben painfully had to make the decision to disown his only son for the greater cause of the nation. In 1776, overcoming family grief and the torturous gout that prevented him from walking normally, Franklin boarded a ship to France. His mission, to convince the King of France to fund money and troops for the American Revolution. Imagine a 70-year-old man who did not know academic French confronting the most formidable diplomats in Europe. With his cleverness, humor, and a simple beaver fur hat, he conquered the entire palace of Versailles, bringing back vital aid for America to defeat the British Empire. He became the only person to sign all 4 of the greatest founding documents of the United States. When Benjamin Franklin closed his eyes for the last time in 1790, more than 20,000 people came to attend his funeral. Looking back at his life, we do not see a path covered in roses. We see a poor boy smelling foul fat, a younger brother abused by his older brother, a father who lost a child, a scientist almost killed by lightning, and a father who had to disown his son for national independence. Benjamin Franklin once wrote, "Some people die at 25 and aren't buried until 75. Franklin was different. He lived every single moment to the fullest, turning the harshest hardships into energy to shine. He did not just tame the lightning in the sky, he turned his own life into a flash of lightning, ripping through the dark night of history."